Well, hello, and welcome back to Read Becca. It's time once again for my weekly chatty catch-up on everything I read, everything I'm currently reading, and everything I'm looking forward to reading, as well as some general lifey chit-chat and catch-up. And this is going to be a quick one because I have to get out of here, and also I don't have terribly much to talk about or too much to say about the things I read this week because they were kind of fluff. I listened on audio to 3 books, all by the same author. I listened to What You Are Looking For Is in the Library. I listened to the sequel to that, or kind of loose sequel, The Healing Hippo of Hinode Park, and then unrelated to that in a new series that only one book has been translated to English so far, Hot Chocolate on Thursday. And these are all that kind of Asian healing fiction. It's very cozy, calming, very formulaic, but they were perfect for long driving and being on the road. So it has that kind of formulaic repetition. You can very much just be engaged in the warming vibes and enjoy that. However, these are kind of heavily propaganda-ish. So I didn't totally love them, but they suited their purpose, I would say, for all 3. So What You're Looking For in the Library, I enjoyed the premise very much. So this one and The Healing Hippo of Hinode Park both follow these very standard format where each chapter is a different character, and they have sort of a central repetition to each story that the character is telling you. So it feels like a selection of vignettes, and they have some sort of repeated element. In the library, it's some new person going to the library. They have something that they're unhappy about in their life, specifically to do with work in almost every one of these cases. And the librarian is a very odd, unusual character. They describe her in not very kind ways, I would say, largely to do with how sizable she is. I kind of took that as they were trying to make her somewhat mystical. It reminded me of a character from Spirited Away, and I'll try and put a picture up here. And so that's what I was thinking of every time. But it was definitely some kind of mild fat phobia. So they show up there. The librarian is there, and she recommends books. She also is constantly needle felting and gives each of them a little needle felted item. That I liked, though it never really totally serves a purpose. And the book is never necessarily direct to what their thing they're seeking is, but it somehow inadvertently points them on the path to something that enriches their life. So like the very first one gets a children's book that they have all these memories of, and in that children's book, it involves these sort of mice, I think, in the forest making an egg dish. And this person goes to pursue enjoying making this egg dish themselves and decides to really assert themselves at that. And the whole message, of course, both to that story and throughout everything, is if you just work harder and always have a smile on your face, everything will be great. And this person is having a real struggle in a kind of dead-end job, and it all gets magically fixed. And that's pretty much what every story is. So as I said, very propaganda. So the second book, and the translator of that one was Alison. So each of these have different translators, so I do want to make sure I note that. But the second book, The Healing Hippo of Hinode Park, was much more about personal issues and interpersonal issues, and I really enjoyed that. I think it felt like a move slightly forward in social awareness, I guess, and not quite as regressive in the propaganda that it was leaning on. It felt like it was grappling with a little bit more nuance. But in The Healing Hippo of Hinode Park, the rumor is that this hippo statue in the park can heal if you touch it. But most of these people are not looking for a physical healing. They're kind of looking for well-being. Some of them have physical issues that they're dealing with, but for the most part, it's about general well-being and something they're struggling with. One of them is struggling in school. And again, it's a repetition of every single person goes through their own story in each distinct chapter. They encounter this hippo and hear the legend of the hippo healing someone and sort of lean on that. For both of these 2 stories, there isn't anything actually mythical. It has that whimsical feel, but there's not anything fantastical to it whatsoever. They just are thinking about this thing, and having it in their mind and having the focus on it really changes their perspective. And I do like that. I think there's a lot to like and to take out of these, but it just goes too far into that pro-corp propaganda that I don't like. The third was much more successful for me, I think. And this one doesn't have the repetitive element, and it's not sort of tied into the previous. So this one is in the same format of having each chapter being a different person's story, And it feels like the cohesion element is just simply that all of the people are interconnected in some way. So they have relationships with one another, they have encounters with one another. It also is more interesting because it takes place both in Japan and in Australia. And so you kind of get this new sense of things rather than having a very one-note singular location that we had with both of the previous. So I enjoyed the vibes. That was about it. I think the third was definitely my favorite, but all of these were very short, very cozy, calming, and formulaic, and that's exactly what I was looking for. So I forgot to say lots of things during this, but very specifically something I want to make sure I got in here is that the whole time I was reading these three, it came across so much to me, or provided so much context to me, having read in the past Sayaka Murata's books, Earthlings and Convenience Store Woman. Those books will not be for everyone, especially Earthlings has some very extreme content, but it feels like these three contextualize exactly what Murata is pushing against in her books. All of these expectations about societal demands, the individual as a service to society, and work culture in Japan particularly. So I feel like they provided me so much more insight to that, even though it's something I was sort of already aware of. Especially the Hippo of Hinode Park really got across something to do with like how you are a cog in service to society that Murata is really critiquing. So from there, I was driving a lot, and I ran out of books because I had prepared those three and realized I already had Nona the Ninth on my Libby app. And so I have started on Nona the Ninth, but I was planning to do an immersive read and like really sink into it. But because I was driving, I knew I would not be able to do that, obviously. So I made the decision. I was like, I know I'm really going to enjoy this, and I already have it. And I think this is not Nona. This is Harrow, I keep calling it Nona. That Harrow the Ninth is such a complicated book. It's very fractured, and some of it's told in second person. It's a really confusing book. So I have read it before, but I was basically like, I have all this time driving. I'm just going to listen to it and just flow with it, enjoy it, because I know I love this book. And I'm going to turn around and do an immersive read after I have finished just listening to it because it's so confusing. So I'm almost finished with my listen now, and I'm just casually listening, just enjoying the story and really going with it. So then I'm gonna sink into a real immersive read. So that's what's going on with my current reading for the most part. I'm continuing on with a rapid buddy read a very slow buddy read of The Sorrows of Young Werther. That reads very rapidly because we only read a couple of pages every day. So that's all I'm reading. So I have wide open pretty much, other than my book, Do Price book, which is slow going as well, but I'm not talking about that. So all of that to say, that's everything that I worked on books. I didn't watch any shows, or I didn't finish any shows or movies, so I have nothing to talk about there. And life update was, as I said, I was driving a lot because I took a trip to Tennessee for a few days this week. I've had a couple of postponements because of weather. The drive through the Midwest is not great during springtime and early summer, so it took some postponements and finally getting it settled for a few days when it was going to be nice weather. And so I went and visited Tennessee. Really enjoyed my time there. It was so lovely. I saw a bunch of stuff in Nashville very rapidly, but I, of course, made time to stop by Ann Patchett's bookshop. So I'll make sure I have a picture here for you to see. And I just enjoyed my time very, very much. The drive was even really, really beautiful the whole way, and I didn't hit too much road work, so I got very lucky. It really worked out for the most part. So that was a fun week, but it has meant not as much actual reading, but I think finishing 3 books is still pretty good. So my one recommendation for the week very much ties into my activity this week and visiting Parnassus Books. Ann Patchett was not there because she's off on book tour, but somehow within her book touring, she fit in doing a TED Talk. So that's my recommendation for the week, is that you go check out Ann's lovely TED Talk on her love of reading. And I think it's titled A Love Letter to Reading. It's really about how she has this faith and joy in reading for her whole life and what that means to her, and her story of starting a bookshop and how meaningful that is. And I just loved it. It was beautiful. So definitely go check out that video. I will link it in the description box below. And I think I just realized I am sure I forgot to say all of the translators for the books, even though I made sure I had the list in front of me. I didn't say them, so I will make sure I put them on the screen as the books are up, and they will also be in the description box down below, because we like to credit our translators. And that is all for my week this week. So I am quickly wrapping up and wishing you a wonderful week in reading and in life, and thank you so very much for watching.